Prince William, second in line to the British throne, has been welcomed at Eton College, one of the world's most prestigious schools. His 5 years within its walls will be more than just an education. It's a vital preparation for the making of a king. The whole future of the British monarchy may rest upon how this personable young man rises to the challenge.
William's a thoughtful, sensitive young man. When he was younger, he had this reputation as being known as Basher Billy at one of his earlier schools. In fact, that's as far removed from the truth as it could be. He's not like that at all. He's much more considerate than many people perhaps once gave him credit for.
He's a very normal, nice boy. I have a great friend whose son is at Nightgrave with him, who I occasionally go around and have a drink with, and I look around and sort of take a double take and realize there are two little boys watching gladiators on television, and I go, oh, a rather polite young man has gone, how do you do, on the way in like this, but I haven't thought twice. And I've suddenly realised I've just shaken hands with the future King of England.
Well, this is going to be the most famous man in the world. This is going to be the world's most eligible bachelor. He's strikingly good looking at the moment, and he's only 13, 14. As he gets older, I mean, I think we're going to be looking at, you know, a Robert Redford-like character heading for the throne of England.
My time at Eton was basically, you know, breaking a lot of rules, really. You know, playing in rock bands, sneaking off to girls' schools, drinking a lot, smoking strange substances in the holidays. You know, basically being a downright urchin, really.
Prince William is now 13 years of age. He's being groomed to one day become King of England and head of the Commonwealth. But his succession faces many hurdles. The breakup of his parents' marriage and the question mark over the future of the monarchy means that he's facing one of the most unenviable jobs in public life. As he moves ever closer towards his royal destiny, this film follows him on his last summer of childhood. His reputation among his friends and family is of a boy keen to be where the action is.
He's action man in the sense that he enjoys his sports. He plays rugby and football, cricket, athletics, swims, and of course we know he loves skiing too.
He is, I think, something of a speed freak. He loves tearing up and down to London in his dad's open-top Range Rover. He's obviously quite good at driving, because he does drive Range Rovers around the royal estates. Adores roller coasting.
As the son of the heir to the throne, William has had the kind of charmed life any 13-year-old boy would envy. He has trust funds in place that guarantee to make him a multi-millionaire by his 21st birthday. Every year he has at least 2 skiing holidays, and at home his spare time is spent at major events and meeting his sporting heroes.
What 13-year-old boy wouldn't have given his right arm to have been taken under the wing of the England rugger captain Will Carling, to go to Twickenham, to go to Cardiff Arms Park, to sit in the royal box with his mother, to go to the Wimbledon men's singles finals, the ladies singles finals. Yes, it's wonderful. He's been to Silverstone. He sat in the cockpit of a racing car with Jackie Stewart, you know, one of our great all-time heroes, draped over his shoulder. It's marvellous.
The question is whether William's enviable lifestyle is at odds with the image of the man of the people that his parents are so keen to encourage.
I think William's great blessing is that his mother actually lived in the real world for a while. She grew up in the semi-real world. She had a job for a while. William's the first heir to the British throne, I think, in British history, of whom that's true. And so Diana, for instance, takes him and his brother shopping to Marks and Spencer's in Kensington High Street and makes them stand in line and pay the bill. And this was never dreamt of in Charles's childhood, and I think little things like that, little normal days out that she takes them to restaurants in the West End, Thorpe Park, all the rest of it, Colorado. These are things which will turn William into perhaps a much more rounded, well-balanced figure, despite his parents' divorce, than his father's turned out to be.
Princess Diana is determined that William should be exposed to all sides of life in Britain today. She has consequently taken him on at least 2 visits, to my knowledge, to the homeless, to projects run in central London, where he has been quite remarkable. I mean, in fact, somebody told me afterwards that his presence was an absolute revelation. He mixed easily with these down and outs. He played a game of chess with one of them, and while his mother was talking to others, William went off on his own agenda.
This summer, as a special treat to mark William's successful entry into Eton, Princess Diana took both her sons, along with one of William's school friends, for the most exciting holiday of their young lives. They flew secretly into the United States, destination Colorado, and the remote mountain ranch of actress Goldie Hawn. There the boys spent relaxed days in the hills, cycling and enjoying other mountain pursuits. These included riding quad bikes on the public road, where these scenes were exclusively filmed. William is in the yellow helmet, and his brother Harry is speeding ahead in the white. That was before the highlight of the holiday, whitewater rafting on the Colorado River. The river was so high it had swept one raft away the day before. But after taking advice from local experts and a detailed briefing on safety, Diana and her party took to the river for a thrilling ride that put mere theme parks in the shade. This trip to Colorado and Diana's frequent solo visits to the United States have fueled speculation that one day she'll base herself in America. It's even been suggested that after Eton, Prince William may go to university there.
I'm pretty certain that William, if he does go abroad, and I think there's a good chance, will end up in America. America is very much the focus of his mother's life. It'll probably be the focus of her future. I wouldn't be at all surprised if William went to an American university. I could honestly see that coming.
Back in Britain after the holidays, it's business as usual for the royal firm. But beneath the public show of family unity, there lies the trauma of a very public and painful separation. Prince Charles admitted adultery with Camilla Parker Bowles, and in retaliation, Diana is said to have manipulated the press. The boys were caught in the middle.
The children were Diana's most potent weapon, and when their marriage started to break down, which was actually much earlier on than we all imagined, she used them against him. And so if Charles wanted to have lunch outside in the garden at Highgrove, she'd have them having lunch in the nursery. They were her weapon, that's all she had to fight with. So they unfortunately got stuck in the middle of that.
It was at this time, when Diana was at an all-time low, that she turned to royal journalist Richard Kay to put her side of the story. They were photographed in her car in a London park, and he's since been seen as a close confidant of the princess.
I think it's too pat to say she puts on these shows for the lenses. I don't honestly think it's either fair or true any longer. There may have been a time in the early days when Diana was only too happy to be seen in certain situations, as indeed Charles was. But Diana's love for the cameras and the press has long since passed. She no longer much tolerates the presence of cameras in her company.
Indeed, it was the press that named several men who were said to have had romantic links with Diana. The whole messy saga culminated with the appearance of Prince Charles in a television program in which he attempted to explain his actions to a critical public.
Anybody who goes on television and admits to adultery with another man's wife, a friend's wife, and says that he never loved his children's mother is not really a very good father. Whether Charles thought about his children before he did that, whether he thought about the Parker Bowles children before he did that, I do not know. His own father, Philip, who's accused occasionally of being tyrannical and is in many ways overbearing, was appalled by that, and so was his mother, the Queen.
I think it was like watching the Prince of Wales commit suicide in public. I think it was one of the crassest things that anybody, let alone our future king, has ever done is to go on television and say that you've been having an affair with another woman, a married woman. Normally it's the sort of thing that if that happens, tragic as it is, you try to keep quiet about it. You do not go on television before maybe 100 million people in the world saw him saying, I've been making love to somebody else's wife.
I think William will always carry the scars of such a public breakup. I think that's what was perhaps more hurtful than anything. Is, he could be driving up the M4 motorway from school, coming home from school, and there's a huge billboard, advertising his mother's unhappiness.
They have gone to enormous lengths, Charles and Diana, to try and protect the boys from the publicity, which has sort of wrapped them like in a shroud, really, over the last 3 years. Diana goes to great lengths to avoid seeing the newspapers. They have monitored television programs, but naturally, as William gets older, he's in his 14th year, he has a radio, he can listen to the news, and at Eton it's going to be wholly different from his prep school, where such things could be monitored.
Since the separation, what has emerged is that the different worlds of their parents have become even more exaggerated. This is the children's holiday with Diana last year, a public beach in Spain, and the opportunity for William to fulfill every boy's ambition of riding on a jet ski.
I think she's a wonderful mother. I think whatever else you can say about her, she's a wonderful mother, and she has tried very hard to show William and Harry that there is another life out there. And I think she's done it very well, and she knows that she's going to have to let go, that the older they get, the more they're going to be with their father, especially William.
Why the Prince of Wales hasn't taken the boys to a McDonald's or Thorpe Park is a very good question. I don't think he probably knows what a McDonald's is.
Prince Charles's style as a parent is strikingly different to Diana's. Publicly, at least, he's less demonstrative, and the activities he shares with his sons reflect the pursuits of a traditional country landowner. Polo is his favoured sport, along with hunting, shooting and fishing. And when they're with Prince Charles at Balmoral or Sandringham, the boys are always conventionally and formally dressed.
Because the media thinks Charles is a wimp, would love William to prefer his mother, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. Whenever he is photographed on holiday with his father, he always looks like he's having the time of his life. And if you look at some of the Christmas cards that Charles has been sending over the last 2 years, a picture of Charles in poppy fields with his arms around both the princes, they all look really genuinely happy.
It's in this setting that Charles has introduced somebody who's come to be seen as a surrogate mother to the princes. Tiggy Legg Burke shares Charles's passion for country pursuits in a way that Diana never did.
It's a rather curious arrangement, and it has prompted some observations over the years. But Tiggy is, though, to be fair to her, she's become a friend to these boys as well. I mean, William is very fond of her, she's very fond of the boys.
They're clearly going to have to make a choice between their father's world and their mother's world. Their mother, we know, doesn't like horses. She doesn't like the countryside very much. Their father, we know, has already taught them to shoot rabbits and start killing birds. His father, who's the president of the World Wildlife Foundation, slaughters more birds than anybody else in Britain. It depends which road they go down. It seems to me if they go down their father's road, it's the recipe for disaster. The only hope they have is to go down their mother's road and try and share her canny sense of public opinion and her knack for adopting a stance that people think is in tune with the times. That's what the royals have signally failed to do over the last 5 to 10 years.
So as William approaches manhood, the public trauma of his parents' separation is an inescapable factor in his life. But close family members think he's strong enough not to have been deeply damaged by it, as William's older cousin explains.
But it would seem that he has come through with flying colours, and the devotion he's received from both his parents and the example they've offered him and the love and all the... It would seem that the negative aspects of coming from a broken home have not been at all evident, and he survived unimpaired.
So the age of innocence is over for Prince William. Coming next, the school that has been trusted to educate a future king. Eton is one of the largest, oldest and the most famous of Britain's public schools. Founded in 1440, it has over 1,200 pupils. It costs £12,500 a year to send a boy to the school, although there are 70 free scholarships. But it's still a bastion of privilege and wealth, with many idiosyncratic traditions.
This is the typical Eton school uniform. You've got the morning coat, black waistcoat, striped trousers.
You do the buttons up.
This is how Prince William would have been fitted for his first Eton suit. As a new boy, he must be sure to leave the bottom button of his waistcoat undone.
There you go. And then leave the bottom one undone, for sure.
He's not allowed to wear coloured waistcoats. They're only for the most senior boys. Kitting out a new boy for Eton is an expensive business.
If they buy, the complete outfit,
if they go for the overcoat and a tweed jacket and a blazer and trousers, it varies, but it could go up to £1,000, or I've even had mothers that have spent £2,000.
One of the first things that new boys like William have to learn are the huge number of school traditions, including a vast colour test, where they have to memorise the colours of the different houses, sports clubs and societies. Luckily for Prince William, he won't be immediately punished if he gets them wrong.
My best advice to Prince William starting off at Eton is play it cool to begin with. You've got a fortnight in which you're sort of punishment free. Now that fortnight is quite pressurized because you have to learn all the colours of the 26 different houses. So there's quite a bit of pressure on you. Play it cool. Stay with the mates that you've come with from prep school and get their support and just find out what's going on.
The place is stiff with pop stars' children and Solzhenitsyn's children and Duke's children and royal children, stuffed with them. And they're more or less taken for granted. But they do not have the glamour, the extraordinary, the uniqueness which they would have anywhere else. And the whole place is geared to the idea of slightly freakish small boys like Prince William arriving and being assimilated into the system. So I think he probably got a better chance of a normal education, of emerging, not totally sort of distorted and warped, at Eton than anywhere else.
When King Berendra arrived there, he was my contemporary, and the head chaplain of the school came up to him and said, now, Prince Berendra as he was then, he said, now, I'm afraid we don't know much about religion in Nepal, and we wondered if you'll be attending chapel. And he said, well, I'm terribly sorry, you see, that's quite impossible, because you see, I am God.
Prince William will be able to enjoy some of the best sporting facilities in the country. Eton rowers are so successful that they often gain places in the elite Oxford and Cambridge University crews. This summer at Henley, for instance, Eton came out on top yet again. William will have to decide when he joins whether to become what Etonians call a wet bob like these rowers. Alternatively, he could opt to keep his feet firmly on land and become a dry bob like these cricketers. The life of a new boy at Eton still involves absolute obedience to his superiors, whether or not you are a king or a mere prince. However, the notorious public school system known as fagging is no longer a way of life.
There were two sorts of fagging. One was your sort of day-to-day fagging, which was tidying up the room and folding up his things and toasting his toast and preparing his tea and all sorts of things like this. That was your sort of general duties as a fag. But while you were a fag, or sort of junior boy, the other one was being asked to send messages, and there was something called a boy call, which went a bit like this. A senior boy would stand at the top of a passage outside the library, which was like the prefect's room. Members of the library were like prefects there. And they would go, boy, up! But we used to go for longer than that. In fact, it went boy to actually went, boy, up! Something like that. And the last one who arrived there to take this fag note over to a man in another house would be the one who had to rush off and do it.
I used to be Lord Balneil's fag, and when I first arrived, I thought, you know, hey, I've got to tidy this guy's room, I've got to wash his socks, you know, I've got to sort of do whatever for him. And for me, you know, it came as a bit of a shock, really. But the bottom line is with fagging is that, I mean, Lord Balneil was an excellent bloke, and you know, he was really, really nice to me. And I think any institution or, you know, rules at school, if they're not abused, then they're very useful. And fagging was a very useful tool to get to know the older boys. When fagging was abolished, just when I got to the top of the school, it actually sort of moved the different years apart, and there wasn't really any, you know, kind of sort of homogenous house, if you see what I mean. So I think if it wasn't abused, which it certainly wasn't by my fag master, then it was a very, very good thing. It's a shame it's gone.
The decision to send Prince William to Eton has been the subject of much debate. It's never educated a British monarch. It's sat on the edge of the town of Windsor with major security problems, and it's recently won a reputation with a number of widely reported drink and drug incidents. Diana discussed the choice of school with leading society journalists.
I had a lunch with Diana about a year ago, and she said that the reasons why she wanted them, both of the sons, to go to Eton was because they would be in an environment where they would feel relatively comfortable. And I guess that's probably right. I mean, I wish it wasn't so. I wish that we had a state system of education in Britain where the royal family would send their kids to state schools.
I'm absolutely convinced that the decision to send William, and possibly later Harry, to Eton was made by the Princess of Wales. I asked her over lunch one day, and she said she insisted it was a joint decision, and then looked at me in a sort of sceptical way when I looked skeptically at her. I'm absolutely convinced that it was her doing. She doesn't like Gordonstoun. She thinks it's a long way away. She doesn't like anything to do with Prince Charles. Eton is her family school, so to her family school her boys will go.
The big day began at London Airport, where the Duke of Edinburgh took Prince Charles to fly him to school. The Duke used the Heron aircraft.
Prince William will be the first member of the immediate royal family not to go to Gordonstoun, a school miles from anywhere in the Scottish Highlands.
This is the really modern way to go to school, by aeroplane, piloted by father. On arrival, the Duke and his son were received by the chairman of the governors, the kilted Captain Ian Tennant.
When Charles was there, it was noted for strict discipline, early morning runs and cold showers. It was an unhappy time for the young prince, as a contemporary of his at the school recalls.
He was bullied at Gordonstoun, very subtly. I mean, he wasn't sort of held upside down, you know, sort of over a cliff, but people wouldn't talk to him. People would walk behind him as he walked down to lessons, you know, making sort of peculiar noises. If anyone tried to talk to him, they were accused of sucking up, and you get 30 or 40 boys walking behind Prince Charles and the boy walking with him, all going making a sucking sound. It's very disconcerting. He was very unhappy.
When Prince Charles went in the 50s, it was very tough and quite draconian in those days. I mean, in my days we had girls there and central heating and various other things, so it got a lot better.
It's so far away, it's absolutely isolated. It's not easy to reach. I mean, it's even the airport is somewhere away. Although, of course, he has a home in Scotland. It would have been a different matter if his mother was permanently living in Scotland, but of course she wasn't. And I think it might have been very hard for him to feel that his father and mother were so far away.
He wouldn't have been happy anywhere. He was an unhappy boy, and Gordonstoun just merely exaggerated it. He wasn't popular. He's a very distant boy, very self-contained, and in a rugged outdoor school like Gordonstoun, that really wasn't the best way of approaching it. He would have been much happier, undoubtedly, if he'd gone somewhere else. But as Prince Philip said, I sent him to the school that I went to, and that was the end of the matter.
So Eton won hands down over Gordonston with both Charles and Diana. Prince William has joined Manor House, one of 26 houses at the school. He'll board with 40 other boys, with whom he'll undoubtedly form a close bond.
Where do you come in Latin? What? Where do you come in Latin? Second last. You get 23rd.
One of the closest people to William will be this boy, David Peto, who's his house captain. If everything goes well for Prince William, one day he can hope to become a member of POP, the creme de la creme of Eton society, whose members are elected by their peers. They're distinguished by their fancy waistcoats.
Well, these are worn by the school prefects, or POP as they are called. Some of them are fancy, as you can see. Others are in house or association colours.
The holy of holies is POP. Right. POP is staggering. Once you've achieved the heights, by the way, nearly all people who are in POP, they either end up by becoming Prime Minister, or you see them hanging around in the doorway of W.H. Smith, reeking of meths, because life just is such a terrible disappointment after being in POP that there is no greater thing that could ever happen to you.
I think POP did a lot of damage there, because when people were being put up or hoping to be elected to go into POP, there was an immense amount of bitterness about who got in and who didn't. And in a way, at that age, there were some people who saw getting into POP as being the most important thing in their life. And then they get into POP, and then of course life is rather downhill from then on.
We've got a bunch of Girl Scouts from the United States visiting.
Eton is a cosmopolitan place, firmly anchored on the tourist trail, and the quaintly dressed Etonians are popular with the tourists. There'll be more temptations for Prince William than just sport.
One had great fun going to visit various girls' schools, you know.
Was it quite easy to sort of smuggle girls into the rooms?
Smuggling girls was quite a breeze, actually. You could get them in with not too much of a problem. I remember being caught, though, by my housemaster with a girl in the nude, and he didn't look too kindly on that, I have to say. But probably quite rightly so, but, you know, you run your risk, you get your fun.
Another person with experience of public schools is Tara Palmer-Tompkinson. She's a friend of Prince Charles and has become close to Prince William. Her one concern is that Eton, like many other public schools, is still single-sex.
If there was one thing I would change, it would be to have girls in the classes with them. Just purely because I think it's the 90s now, where, you know, 95, we're not in the dark ages anymore. I think lighten everyone up and just be a bit more realistic, really. You've got a girls' school who hasn't seen a boy in months. You've got a boys' school who hasn't seen a girl in months. You've got a dance on the Saturday night. Can you imagine? Everything's under the table. Straight away, forget the main course. Yeah. But you know, I'm sure that's what goes on, because everyone's like, hasn't seen a boy, hasn't seen a girl for ages, and it's just like...
However, there are certain traditions, like the formal 19th century uniform, that she finds more acceptable.
I guess the most traditional school is Eton, isn't it?
Probably.
With the views to that kind of thing. And I think it'd be the biggest shame if they were all made to, you know, they all look like penguins. I think that's half the thing about it. You know, if they were all made to lose the uniform and, you know, they cap each other, whatever it's called, when they go down the street. I think that's, I think it's nice. And I think schools should maintain their traditions. Otherwise, you know, you lose all the charm and all the, you know, what the school has.
I mean, I actually quite like that, I have to say. I mean, you know, they were nice-looking buildings, beautiful buildings. The tailcoats, you got used to them, you know.
I thought it was pathetic. Like, you have these suits which they're completely impractical, they're freezing cold. I mean, this whole sort of aura of privilege which goes around with Eton, yeah, that doesn't come to the boys. Like, it costs a lot to go there and everything, but where these freezing cold things, they're boiling hot in the summer, they're ridiculous. They look ridiculous. Little boys get beaten up for wearing them if they go into Windsor or whatever they did in my day. And it's just silly, like the whole thing. And you get in trouble for, if your little white thing, as you call it, was out of place, you could be like walking down the street and teacher will come up and get you and attack you for it and give you a punishment for having this out of place, which involved getting up earlier in the morning, which is a classic case of Eton logic, that if you're late for things or you're scruffy, the best way to make you not late is to make you even more tired by making you get up at 6 in the morning. It was ridiculous. But I'm glad you liked it, Jerry.
I liked it. I thought it was okay.
The problems that would crop up for the boys varied tremendously. They were always the problems that any youngsters could have of finding out who they are or where they are or what they're doing, the worries of relationships of one sort or the other, the business of succeeding. Very often with many youngsters there's enormous pressure to be successful, and you know, if some of them thought they weren't quite up to that, that could produce enormous problems for them.
If you fail to make the grade, then that can be very humiliating. I think in my second year there, in front of 400 people in your own year, what they call block, the lower master, who's the sort of the assistant headmaster, read out the results, and he went, "William Sitwell, general total failure." And that can be pretty humiliating, but it teaches you that you do not want to fail again.
Failure isn't something which old Etonian aristocrats can contemplate. The battle to maintain this stately home, Highclere Castle, is being waged with the strategies learned on the playing fields of Eton.
I'm already quite involved with the management of the estate, which is quite a complex business, turning over a fair bit of money. And I guess that Eton really helps people to organise themselves and to help lead other people and encourage and motivate other people. That's all part of the things you do actually learn while you're there. And it also teaches you to be tenacious and to keep on persevering, because you might not be doing too well in some subjects at Eton, but you're encouraged to keep at it, and it's no different in running the estate or any other business activity. You've just got to keep at it, and that's something that one definitely learnt at Eton.
For years, the British aristocracy has favoured Eton. Prince William will be among those who have many of the same pressures, but there are also risks of elitism, according to Lord Montague of Bewley.
I think that Etonians are often accused of being arrogant, and I think that's sometimes true, but I suppose we are sent away thinking or being taught we are the best, and but I hope to hold up to it. When I left Eton, the headmaster got us all together in a big room and told us about upholding the Etonian ethics of politeness and honesty and so on. But the phrase that I remember best was, he said, "One thing I must tell you, never be caught wearing old Etonian braces in a brothel." And I never have.
William won't have to be caught in a brothel to find himself in the news. Holding hands with a girl would be quite enough to make the front page lead. Coming next, the paparazzi on the Prince's trail. This man is Mark Saunders. He's a member of the Paparazzi, photographers who try to capture celebrities in their most intimate moments. He claims to have already staked out 60 locations in and around Eton where he plans to get shots of Prince William.
Well, this is going to be the most famous man in the world. This is going to be the world's most eligible bachelor. He's strikingly good looking at the moment, and he's only 13, 14. As he gets older, I mean, I think we're going to be looking at, you know, a Robert Redford-like character heading for the throne of England. I mean, Charles and Diana were the greatest ambassadors this country has ever produced when they were at their heyday, because Diana was so gorgeous and everybody wanted her on their front pages. She was the world's fantasy in many ways. And I think William is going to be the same thing.
Before Prince William had even got to the school, the Sun newspaper had obtained photographs of what they claimed was the inside of his study bedroom.
William will be in the papers when he makes news. I think people are going to be interested in his lifestyle at Eton. The pictures that we did produce are a typical boys' room. There was nothing terribly intimate about them. There were no pictures of young ladies or the Barbie twins or Pamela Anderson upon the wall, so I don't think that was terribly intrusive at all.
Prince William with the new love of his life, Prince William's first girlfriend, Prince William with some dolly from Slough on a Saturday night. You know, that is obviously of a lot of interest to a lot of people, and yes, that would be the picture. But no, having said that, I mean, there will always be another picture. No matter what you get, there is always going to be another one. You get Prince William with his girlfriend, it'll be great one week. The following week you get Prince William scoring the winning goal in the Inter-Schools Cup final. That'll top it.
If it was a picture of him holding hands with a girl, then we would pay an awful lot of money for it.
If you start talking about long lens photography, the range is as long as you want it to be, as long as you can get a shot. I mean, I could, you know, I've done shots from a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away, abroad. I've done them here in England.
We've had people on the phone all the time offering us stories about Prince William, telling us that the Princess of Wales is arriving the next day, telling us a bit about his rooms, for instance, telling us about his exam results, and that's the way of the world. So it's not a question of us having 13-year-old boys signed up to the Sun till they're 21, till he leaves Eton. It's a question of people giving us information, but we have to temper that with, again, what the information we are given. We check it with the headmaster, we check it with the palace, and nothing goes in the paper that we don't believe to be true.
Royal stories sell newspapers. The headmaster of Eton has promised to expel any boy who talks to the media about Prince William. And the Press Complaints Commission has warned newspapers that they mustn't interview children under 16 or invade the prince's privacy while he's at the school. But undeterred, The Sun has appointed an old Etonian of its own to dig out stories at the school and to find people willing to talk about William.
My favourite Eton story was one about two Eton boys who got drunk and they tried to break into Windsor Castle to see the Queen, and that made it onto the front page a few months ago, so that was my favourite one. And my first big one from Eton as well.
We know drug abuse and drinking goes on, and it goes on at Eton. It's frankly a curse of society, and all schools are affected, and Eton's not excluded. They've expelled a number of boys in recent months for various offences.
Eton, like every public school, can be exposed to misuse of substances. The only difference probably between Eton and every other school in the land is probably the pupils can afford it.
And I think the Eton authorities are going to go to enormous lengths to try and stamp out any kind of drunk abuse over the next 5 years, because if William is tarnished, Eton is tarnished forever. And Eton has an extraordinary name, and they can't afford really to be involved in anything unsavoury with the future King of England.
As future king, Prince William's life is lived constantly under the spotlight of the world's press. He's been filmed from the day he was born. But while his brother Harry seems happy with the cameras around, even at public occasions, William often tries to avoid the prying lenses of the snappers.
I think of no role more appalling, more daunting, more generally depressing than that being out of the throne. It's the enormous responsibilities without power, the endless pressure of publicity, the knowledge that wherever you go, whatever you do, you're on parade, your lightest gesture is going to be picked up. You can't afford to pick your nose or to sneeze or to chat up a girl at a party. Instantly you will be placarded across the world press. I think the pressures must be appalling. I would hate it, hate it, hate it.
He hates us. He really does hate us. He just can't come to terms with it. You know, I think he must get physically sick, the thought of facing this barrage of photographers. And Prince Charles is continually speaks to him about it, and so does his mother, Princess Diana, that, you know, he's got this, and to face the rest of his life. And they are very, very concerned about this.
I think it's a shame that William has such a hatred of the media, because after all, he's going to live in a very media-orientated age, and I think if, God willing, he does become king, it's not a good idea that he hates all of us. I think he should establish a friendly, relaxed relationship. I think you've got to blame his parents for that. You can tell he hates the media, you can tell he hates cameras. I mean, it doesn't seem to have affected Harry so much.
It's a different perspective at the receiving end of the media. Another person related to the royal family who suffered at the hands of the press is Lord Milford Haven. He was at Gordonstoun with Prince Andrew and plays polo with Prince Charles.
In my small way, I've had press intrusion, and you know, it's not a nice thing, and I can imagine that Prince William has had it. Well, I know he's had it since the year dot, and you know, I am sure that he is going to have to live with it far more than his father did. because the world's media now are a lot crueler, shall I say, than perhaps Prince Charles's day.
William has seen Diana dissolve in tears on many occasions because of the attention of the cameras and the press. He has seen his father too, uptight, angry, uncooperative, uncommunicative, and it is understandable that William has therefore adopted some or both of these traits.
Now that he's actually been able to read the newspapers which have chronicled his parents' split up, he now realises or believes that they are at least partly to blame, which has made his relationship with the media deteriorate considerably. And he now, for example, on the skiing slopes, almost always refuses to take his goggles off because he can't stand being photographed.
But this year on his skiing holiday we saw a new Prince William. He took charge of a royal photo call with Prince Harry and his two cousins, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie.
Morning, William. How are you enjoying your holidays together?
Fun, thanks.
Enjoying it? It's good.
Fun.
Good fun.
Look here, please.
Could you look this camera, please?
Who's the best skier of all forward? Well, improving these two, very good.
They're improving?
Very good skiers.
Richard, sorry, could you ask round here? Sorry.
Ask a question behind us, Rob.
Rob, sorry, they're not looking at your time. Sorry. Thank you very much. Here you can. That's it.
William, do you hope to have a ski together at some stage?
Yes, it'll be good fun. It was very good. Enjoy it.
I think it was New Year's Day or the day after, and there was a blizzard blowing, and I remember all my cameras were covered in snow, and I was covered in snow, and I was really cursing this job. You know, I was freezing cold, and this little fella come up to me, and he brushed the snow from me, and he said, "Happy New Year, Arthur." He put his hand out, and it was Prince William. And I thought that was pretty nice of him.
And it was actually rather delightful. And William answered one or two questions, and he quite pleasantly, very pleasantly in fact, and he smiled in all the right parts. I think he was only too happy when it was over, because he just says to his father afterwards, "Daddy, will they now leave us alone?"
So if Prince William is more cooperative with the press, will they cooperate with the palace by being less intrusive in their coverage of stories about him?
I resent the word intrusive. What we do is actually report the news, and we actually report what we believe people are interested in. Intrusive it has some kind of a condemning term about it. If we find interesting news about Prince William at Eton or any part of his life, we will report it. And we bring to that reporting the same responsibility that we bring to every other element of our reporting.
What sort of responsibility would that be then?
Well, clearly we're not going to start saying, showing plans of where his rooms are in Eton. We're not going to talk about his movements day by day, because there's obviously a security implication. And, you know, we have to take a sense of responsibility about that.
Indeed, security is one of the big worries for both the royal family and Eton. The school is sited on the main road of a busy tourist town and is easily accessible from public roads and footpaths. We asked a leading expert who has coordinated security for the royal family to review existing security arrangements at Eton.
Public access from where we are at the moment to the school behind us, that would not pose a major problem to a determined attack unless there were some more forcible security measures put into place. Perimeter lighting, some sort of maybe intruder system, intruder alarm system, patrolling of the grounds, amongst others. It's highly likely that there will be some form of intrusion attack, whatever that might be, against Prince William. There have been those forms of attack against Prince Charles last year, intrusions into palace grounds. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, by who, and exactly where. Small beacon onto you. It's called a PLD. Or
because the dangers are so great, Prince William is expected to be the first member of the royal family to carry an electronic tagging device concealed about his body.
I'm going to fit you with this small transmitter. It's called a PLD, or personal locating device. And what it's designed to do is, if you get lost anywhere, we'll be able to find you. Okay. Now, we want to tape this somewhere that it's not going to fall off. Now, if we stick it on a wrist or whatever, it can be knocked off in the day-to-day routines. We can sort of put it under your armpit somewhere, or we can put it somewhere down on your ankle. So if you just want to lift your trouser leg up for me, all we'll do, we're just going to tape this to the inside of your trouser leg, the inside of your leg, so that, just pull your sock down for a little bit, and all we'll do, just take that in there. Okay, is that comfortable?
That's fine.
All right, okay, just lift your sock back up, put your trouser leg back down. Now, wherever you go, we'll be able to find you.
Its political power may be gone, but the House of Windsor still has vast estates, enormous wealth and influence. Just 10 years ago, the monarchy looked completely secure, but debate about its future is now rife. Prince William must be wondering whether he'll ever become king.
One wonders, of course, whether there will be a monarchy for William to be in charge of beyond the death of the present Queen. If there is, to my mind, it will be only because it's a radically changed monarchy from the one we have now. It will pay all its taxes. It will not have a private yacht, trains and planes maintained at the taxpayer's expense. It may have something less than 8 castles that it chooses to move between, also at the taxpayer's expense.
I don't think that even though a large number of people would express views critical of the royal family, very few, I think, would actually, if a question was put to them, vote in favour of sweeping them away and substituting a republic or whatever form of government was considered desirable. I think that the institution is still enormously stable and generally supported.
The public will not tolerate a hooray Henry idle monarchy. So in that respect, a lot is on young William's shoulders. He cannot be seen as a classic example of the idle, very privileged rich. He is going to have to work, he's going to have to work for the firm, he's going to have to work for Britain. And it will be bad news indeed if he becomes a dissolute young man. But he won't, in my view. I'm convinced that he has all the necessary backbone, makeup to produce a rather intense, perhaps, but rather sensitive prince.